by Benning. Darnell Nurse left it in the corner, gets left center. Perry scores! Corey Perry!
Ilya able to shake away from Solani. It's given away to Solani around in front. Score! Teemu Solani with the steal.
And the fans want one. Score! Off the floor! On the board! Paul Kariya!
Hey everybody, it's a Forever Mighty post-season show. It's Pat and Eddy on the mics today. What's going on, Ed? How's Canada?
Not bad. It's finally starting to feel like summer out here. And Corey Perry's buying $7 million houses in my hometown, so it doesn't affect me whatsoever, but things are going well.
Yeah, things are going well, right? I mean, we waited an extra day to do the podcast because obviously we had the inside track to know that the Ducks we're going to hire Dallas Eakins as a coach today, right? And then announce it later this week. But we were able to break it down today.
As is with always when we record podcasts, we recorded what was it, a week ago now? We recorded our last show, and day after Corey Perry news comes out from Pierre LeBrun, of course. No, I can't complain because now we get to do another show, and at perfect timing again. We were going to record yesterday with just a big breakdown of the Corey Perry situation and throw in maybe some NHL stuff. And then we decided to wait till today and get, you know what, Dallas Eakins news comes out. So we had bad timing on the last show, good timing on this one.
No official comment by the Ducks, by the way. No, nothing official, as this organization's very private and doesn't like to leak any information whatsoever or say anything's confirmed until they feel like it. But all the major sources, I mean, all the big players are talking about it right now. Frank Saravelli was able to put out a tweet about it. Eric Stevens basically confirmed it in The Athletic. So it's out there. It's happening. It's Dallas Eakins is the new head coach for the Anaheim Ducks. Corey Perry stuff is huge, and it sucked that we weren't able to get together. Either you, Jason, or two of the three of us get together and do a show because, I mean, it really, really, really is important information. So we'll get to that in a bit. But we got to talk about Dallas Eakins because kind of been a foregone conclusion to me. I mean, I don't know how you feel about it, but I mean, this was par for the course for Bob Murray. He just decided to check all his little boxes and make it look like he was, checking under, everything in the, in the NHL, looking under all the rugs, see if anyone swept anything under the dryer by accident or the refrigerator, and then decided to come out and go, yeah, I'm going to do what my bosses say and hire Dallas Eakins because that's what they want.
I can't believe the Ducks. I think at the end of the season, when you looked at how many coaching vacancies there were and probably were going to be, I don't think I would have thought the Ducks would have been the last team to make a decision. They seemed like they would have had the clearest path out of almost anybody because of the success that Dallas Eakins had, and maybe, they just have to wait until the Gulls playoff run was done, and that seemed like the only thing that would hold it up. And then
or the Stanley Cup playoff, apparently.
But yeah, like that seems to have any bearing in it, but you would think, like, after the Gulls got knocked out of the playoffs, I fully expected them. I think we even mentioned on the show, we kind of expected them to make that announcement within the week of the Gulls getting eliminated from the Western Conference Final. Didn't hear it. Still felt like he was the guy because nobody else had really been brought up. We had speculated Grönborg, but there was really no concrete information behind that. We just kind of hoped that he was going to be there. And then we had a coaching candidate show on Patreon, I think almost 2 months ago now, where we kind of just speculated some names. And
Ron Wilson was a big player in my list, if you remember correctly.
Nothing had come out, right? We just kind of brought up those names because there was nobody else. It was Dallas Eakins. We wanted to kind of get some speculation and some debate going, and then finally we start hearing some names. Todd Nelson and Bonus comes out, and then Scott Sandelin comes out, and then there was a fourth as well. Who was the fourth guy? How am I not remembering it now? It's Todd Nelson, Bonus, Scott Sandelin, and then Dallas Eakins, and there was I'm already forgetting who it was. Either way, there was 4 guys.
I can't remember.
See, they don't matter. But and then they all come out, and a week and a half later, they slowly, one by one, get knocked off.
Oh, Lane Lambert. That's the other guy.
Lane Lambert, yeah. Todd Nelson goes first, then Lane Lambert goes, then Bonus gets, apparently he never even interviewed for the position, and then Sandelin signed that extension with the University of Minnesota Duluth, but he was still kind of in the mix. And then obviously today, that I think as of yesterday, it was Eakins and Sandelin. We even put out a tweet. It was between them two. And then today we got the announcement from Frank Saravelli that All the people that were interviewed for the job were contacted, said that they were out, and it seems like it's Dallas Eakins' job.
How is this anyone's surprise that it's Dallas Eakins?
Can't be. You can't.
I mean, we knew it was
Just
going to
because
happen.
the farce that went along with it, right? The fact that we expected it easily to be him, and then a bunch of other people kind of got in the mix, but this is what we expected. I guess pretty much the entire season that it was going to be him.
How do you feel about it? I know that you were not 100% in his camp as like him being your guy. It was like, of course, going to be Bobby's thing that he was going to do because Sam Willies wanted it also. But are you a big supporter of Dallas Eakins, and you kind of can throw his NHL past behind him? Because I mean, my God, it was forever ago. One and two, he's had a lot of success with these players. Or are you kind of like, no, I didn't want him to begin with. We should have went somewhere else.
Well, listen, I'm not surprised. I don't think anybody's surprised that that he's going to be the new head coach of the Anaheim Ducks. Like we said, that was kind of what was expected. But I'm kind of on both sides. I'm on the fence about it, right? Like I think he's the best option, and I like promoting from within. And when you look at who they had interviewed, Scott Sandlin, one of the most successful coaches, with you look at winning percentage in the NCAA. Seems like he's doing good things there, but he decides to stick around. And there has been some success out of coaches recently coming out of the NCAA. When you look at what I think Jim Montgomery has done with the Dallas Stars, among others, there's some guys who've come in, and then, of course, you have your Dave Hackstalls who didn't work out, so it's kind of 50-50 there. But, Todd Nelson and Rick Bowness in Dallas, what they were able to do there this year, they turned Dallas into a really competitive team. Obviously, they got a lot of help from Ben Bishop and net. So some decent candidates, but I still think Dallas Eakins was probably the best choice out of all of them because of the experience he has with these players and the fact that you look at some of the young guys that are going to be probably full-time regulars on this team next year, and Sam Steele, Troy Terry, maybe Maxime Comtois. They spent most of the season working with Dallas Eakins, so I think that's going to help the Ducks in their transition. I feel like he's the right guy when you look at the transition the Ducks are going in. I just don't know how much success he's going to have. Whether that's just because he has limited head coaching experience in this league, and I'm not fully convinced that his style is what's going to be able to make the Ducks win, or just because I don't really have a lot of confidence in this Ducks team next year. I don't think they're going to be a competitive team. I know some people disagree with me, like Jason, but I just I don't think they're going to be that competitive. The odds are going to be stacked against him right off the bat, and it's going to be hard for him to have a good season. I think if they make the playoffs, that's an excellent season for Dallas Eakins. I don't know if they're going to make the playoffs next year. So if they at least make the playoffs, that's a good run for him.
It's going to be a tough one. They're definitely not setting him up to be ultra successful, right, with the team he's being given at an NHL level. I mean, Sean Tierney put out his WAR graph today and showed the Ducks getting, 70 points. So not that those models are 100% accurate all the time, but I mean, just like the word around the league is this team's not going to be very good. And we all kind of knew that as Ducks fans, not to be expecting, taking the cup home. But I mean, I honestly expect a more competitive team than we saw this year. I mean, I could be wrong about that, but the Ducks did show signs under Bob Murray that they've been able to play a better brand of hockey than the way they played under Randy Carlyle. The injection of youth is going to do a lot for this team. I think the Ducks are going to play with a better pace. So I'm kind of looking forward to seeing what's going on here. I mean, Jordan Samuels Thomas, right? That's he used to play for the Gulls. He's a writer for the Athletic. He's really excited. It seems like that Dallas Eakins is going to be the head coach here. Says that he coaches guys basically player by player, right? He's able to coach individually and not be the guy who screams at you or the guy who just doesn't talk to you and then benches you. But he knows how to motivate individually, and I think that's considering the youth on this squad going to be a big deal. Because that's who's on this team. It's a bunch of kids.
It's a lot of promise, right? Like there's a potential for it to work out really well because he knows these guys, and you kind of have to be that player coach nowadays, it seems like. And I think he fits the bill for being that, I guess, a modern day coach in that aspect. But I don't think anybody's going to be really surprised if this doesn't work out. There's a chance the Ducks aren't going to be good next year. Not maybe most of that might not be Dallas Eakins' fault. The team just doesn't look like it's going to be that competitive. But he's going into a rough situation. I don't think it's the same when you look at what he went into with Edmonton and how bad that team was. It's not. I don't think it's at the same proportion.
They were absolutely terrible. Come on.
But he's taken over the Ducks in a similar position or when you look at where the Ducks were and where they are now. They're a team that perennially made the playoffs. They're a team that went far in the playoffs. They were considered Stanley Cup contenders for 4 or 5 seasons, and now they're transitioning to a team that's some people think aren't going to make the playoffs. Maybe they can squeak in. Nobody has them listed as contenders. Vegas has them at 66-1 odds to win the Stanley Cup, which is bottom 5. They're down there with LA's down there. If the only team who's worse than them is Ottawa, so there's some people who think they can make it, some people who think they can't. He's got the odds stacked against him. It's going to be a tough season for him to go in and do well, and that's why I think if he just improves on this season, that's a good year for him. And the Ducks were not good this year. I think we all know that. So if he can at least just somewhat improve, and if they look better, I think that's the thing. You can be bad and at least look better. The Carolina Hurricanes have done that for how many years, where they seem to not make the playoffs until this year, but they were a fun team to watch, and they looked like a better hockey team, and people were wondering, why don't they make the playoffs? They look, they play good hockey. You look at the advanced stats, and they're usually near the top of the league. If he can do something like that, I'll be fine with it, because it looks like then you can see the transition. You can see the Ducks are moving in a different direction.
Sorry, I'm getting over being sick there. So you guys see me go like this constantly because I'm coughing. But yeah, it is. He is being set up to not be have the best season, like you were saying. It's going to be tough for him. But I gotta agree along the lines of what I read today in the Cooper Stevens article. Cooper even pointed out that he even quoted Jordan's piece. He says, and I'll read it right here. Anaheim fans should expect to see a different Ducks team with Dallas behind the bench. Like the rival Kings, it's time for the Ducks to catch up with the rest of the NHL's pace of play. Expect to see a Ducks team that plays with a lot more speed and energy than years prior. And with that, in my opinion, comes these kids are not only just going to be fast and play fast, and we've dissected the hell out of that term and how that works in the NHL in many podcasts, but I expected to actually be faster with guys like Eves, Kessler, Perry not being in the lineup coming up for next season. And it also remains to be seen what other moves are going to be taking place this summer. But the injection of the youth is not like these are fourth-line guys. And Troy Terry, Sam Steele, Max Comtois, Max Jones, these are good players. And I feel like the injection of youth is going to be a really good thing for the Ducks. So I think that they may not have the most successful season, but I don't think they're going to do worse than they did this year. I think we're going to see much higher than 70 points out of them, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think so, and I mean a lot of that's predicted off past success. And this team's going to be very young, and I believe those projections that he had also still had Eves, Kessler, and Perry in the lineup. So if they had that, then maybe 70 points would be attainable. But at least the one thing I think we can bet on is it's going to be a little bit more fun to watch. I mean, even if they are losing, I don't think it's going to be anywhere close to how bad it was last year, where they were just getting completely obliterated in the shot attempts department. And, for the first half of the season, they were barely winning games. It was pretty much John Gibson who was winning them games in the beginning part of the season, even throughout most of the season as well. So it's going to be a lot more fun to watch. The problem is I don't know how much Dallas Eakins can do with this young team to really fix the scoring problem that the Ducks have. They can't score. They couldn't score last year. Then you take Corey Perry, who, yes, he hasn't been scoring, but he still puts up about 50 points a season. Obviously, injury plagued last year, only played 31 games. Getting close to it contributes to the offense. I'm not, we'll get into that later in the show.
Yeah, because I know you're a big Paris fan, here. So,
but somebody has to come in and replace that production. Whether maybe not in the goals department, but just putting up around 40 to 50 points, and maybe Sam Steele or Troy Terry or Max Jones can do that. They have the potential for sure to get that done. But I think there's a lot of ifs in this, for this season coming up. If this guy can step up his game, if Raquel can have a bounce back season, if Jakob Silfverberg can produce the way he did last year, Dallas Eakins probably has the best shot to get those ifs and turn them into reality when you look at some of the younger players and the fact that he worked with them for most of last season. So I think in that sense he's the right hire. It's just going to be tough, though. It's going to be tough to turn this around. The Ducks are going to go in shorthanded with a lot of these young players and bank on them and hope that they do well. And honestly, I do. I hope Dallas Eakins can get the best out of them, but it's going to be tough.
Yeah, but you can look at the bright side of it, right? When you have to go to work every day and you hate your boss, I mean, you still got to do your job, but maybe you don't do it, with as much excitement, or you don't do it, with as much effort as you will with somebody who actually cares about you and cares about, what kind of worker you are, how much you like to be there, but also is good at being a leader and teaching you things about the job, right? That's what you're getting with Dallas Eakins. It stated in the article, he's got the open door policy. He actually cares about his players, cares about them as people, but is also a good leader and knows how to lead. And I got to tell you, man, and from working experience, if you go to your job every day, even if your company's not doing great, aka you're the Ducks, you're not winning a whole bunch. If you have a good environment and you're able to learn and you have a young team that's able to get better day by day, maybe they'll come out and they don't blow the doors off anybody in the first several months, but I expect them to get better, and I expect them to be a much better team than they played last year. We saw that with the players, just with the team we had. I mean, how many times did we send guys up and down to San Diego last year? I mean, my God, the injuries in Anaheim. And then stealing all these guys from San Diego, which is what the farm team's for. They're there. We're not like, it's not like, oh, boo-hoo, San Diego. I mean, these guys want to play in the NHL. So, but the fact that Dallas was able to keep that team together, make it competitive, go all the way to the conference final, and I think the fact that you talked about a scoring problem, I think with a faster pace of play and with better players, I mean, they're just the guys that were listed on right wing are better than Corey Perry. Name a better right wing that the Ducks have on their that are coming into this team that's not better than Corey Perry. I'd be shocked. I don't think Perry's a 40, 50-point guy anymore at all. I feel that it's going to be, like you said, it's an unknown quantity, but I feel like the positive side of things is going to be here for the season. I mean, and I'm not saying a Stanley Cup run, but I think it's going to be a much more exciting brand of hockey, and I think it's going to be successful.
Yeah, I think they have the potential to be one of those teams. You look at our predictions we had for the NHL at the beginning of the season. I think we both, two teams we looked at in Carolina and the Islanders. I think, we either laughed at their chances of making the playoffs or gave them, a dark horse type title like we did. I think you gave Carolina a dark horse title and said that they have a shot to make the playoffs. Most of us picked the Islanders to be bottom. But you look at the Islanders and they got good goaltending and they had a coach come in and the style worked and everything kind of clicked. I think the Ducks have the potential to possibly be that type of team. You still have John Gibson back there. You've got the goaltending. You do have three defensemen who are pretty solid in Fowler, Manson, and Lindholm. It's not like the Islanders defense was great, and even Carolina, they do have some great depth on their blue line, but they didn't have a headliner guy. And then up front, it was just kind of depth and some young guys stepping up, especially for Carolina. And then you look at the Islanders, they just had guys all over the place that were doing well, whether it be Barzal or Everly or Anders Lee. The Ducks have the potential to do that. If Raquel can get back up to a 20 or 30 goal scorer this year and put up 50 to 60 points, that's going to be a huge step. Ryan Getzlaf gets around 60, 70, 80 points, that'll be huge. And then it all depends on what the rookies are going to do. So I think there's a lot of, like you look at the bright side, there's a potential for this team to surprise some people. I don't think, they're not like the Ottawa Senators where they're going to be bottom or they're going to be close to bottom or some of these teams that have no chance. I still don't believe the Ducks are going to make the playoffs, but I can't sit here and say they might not be one of those teams who surprises some people because they have all those question marks. And if things work out perfectly for them, there's a chance that they could get close to making the playoffs or make the playoffs, right? There's a chance they could be a good team if everything goes right.
Yeah, we'll have to see what happens here. I mean, I wouldn't say they don't make the playoffs just right out the gate. We have to see how the rest of the summer shakes down, man. Don't put your predictions out too early. You never know what could happen this summer.
We still got the draft. We
could see Artemi Panarin come to Anaheim, right? I mean, you could see things like that all of a sudden come to fruition. Yeah.
Well, we still got free agency, which is going to change the team, whether the Ducks go out and get anybody or not. And then you've got the draft too, and you never know. I mean, nowadays with how much younger the NHL is getting, whoever we draft at 9, if he impresses in camp, there's a chance he gets a shot and makes the team. You never know.
Let's get on to the big bomb that dropped this week. I mean, we all knew Dallas Eakins was going to be named head coach eventually. I would have been shocked had he not. So Corey Perry's no longer an Anaheim Duck, Eddie. That's
well,
just
he is for now, but his days are numbered.
He's not going to suit up. He's going to finish at 988 games, 12 from hitting 1,000, which probably just crushes so many Corey Perry fans for sure. He's going to finish with the Ducks most likely with 776 points, 372 goals, 404 assists, and just highlight real plays after highlight real plays for him of either being a pest or scoring an overtime winner in the playoffs. Corey Perry, basically, like you said, days are numbered. Pierre LeBrun tweeted out earlier this week, and then a bunch of articles came out with The Athletic about this from Stevens, basically saying that they're looking to trade him. And if they can't find a trade partner, they're going to buy him out, which that part is the part that I've been thinking about when I tweeted out the other day saying I've been thinking a lot about this. It's like, that's the big part of this. Trying to trade Corey Perry, okay, makes sense. Everyone wants to get off from under a bad contract. But to say that you're the Anaheim Ducks, that you're Henry and Susan Samueli, you hate buyouts, you're like, we're going to buy out one of the cornerstones of this franchise that's been here for like the last decade, over a decade. That's big news. That's big news in Anaheim.
Yeah, and honestly, the buyout period just opened yesterday, and I think they're going to explore trade options, and it's probably as close as they get until that first window closes on June 30th. I think they're going to get I don't think they want to deal with this during free agency. I think it gets done before then. So if they don't have him traded by June 30th, I think he gets bought out, and that's it. We've already seen some buyouts. I think the Kings bought out Dion Phaneuf.
Of course.
Yeah, the Flyers bought out Andrew McDonald. So there are teams exploring it, and I'm honestly surprised the Ducks are doing this. I think we talked about the validity of that situation is probably the best move for the Ducks, but we never thought they would do it. We never thought that they would actually go as far to do it. The fact that Corey Perry's been there so long, the fact that he's making so much and that they'd still have to pay him that money, it just didn't seem like a move the Ducks would make. It's a move they've been hesitant to make in the past. It's nice to see them doing it. As much as I love Corey Perry, I think this is the right move for the team. It all depends how things shake out, right? Like if they make a trade where they have to sweeten the pot a little bit to get rid of him and it ends up hurting the Ducks in the long run, you don't want to do that. Maybe you don't want to move that second first round pick, or you don't want to move a prospect or a pick later on to get rid of him when you can just buy him out, and it probably hurts you a little bit less. I mean, what are you going to get in return for this guy? There's probably not a lot of guys, there's probably not a lot of teams that are looking at him saying, well, let's go and trade something of value for him when we can just wait till he gets bought out, he becomes a free agent, and we can just try and get him that way.
Well, before we get there, let's talk about how we even got here, because this is very interesting to me. When a player gets a no-move clause, it's not because the GM's like, oh, let me give you the opportunity to never go anywhere else again. It's more like, hey, we'll take less money if you guarantee that you're never going to trade me unless I say it's okay, right? It's a negotiable piece from the players. A no-movement clause is. And the fact that he is waiving it, and the fact that the word buyout has come out like this is honestly, man, pretty shocking. And I don't think it's just a production issue. And this is all speculation by me. I'm not trying to start a conspiracy theory thing like that, but it just feels like there's something deeply rooted that's going on with Corey Perry and the Ducks organization that just is not sitting well with management. And this is basically we want you out. Like, you are no longer going to be part of this team. That's a big deal to say to your leadership core.
I think so, but from what we've read and what we've seen, it seems like it was almost a mutual decision. Almost like, they are willing to let him go, and he kind of wants to get out of there. I'm sure in his heart he would like to stay in Anaheim, but he can see the direction that this team's going, and I'm sure he wants to win another Stanley Cup before his career is over. And I think for him, this is probably the right career move at this point, to try and move somewhere else and be have a different type of role. Right now, because he's getting paid so much with this team, you look at the criticism towards him, people still treat him like the guy who should score 40 or 50 goals when he's no longer that type of player. He goes somewhere else, signs for a lot less money, he doesn't have that much responsibility on him. He almost becomes, a redemption story, and that if he has a good year, then it's great, and it looks great on him. If he has a bad year, then it's like, oh, well, this is what we kind of expected for a guy we didn't pay too much to sign, and, he's 35 now. So, it's a win-win for him if he goes somewhere else. Of course, it sucks. We wanted to see him get to 1,000 games. I would have loved to see him retire in a Ducks uniform, but I think it makes sense for both the player and the team, and I feel it's more of a mutual kind of.
I like how you stopped my conspiracy theory right away. You're like, no, it's nothing crazy, deeply rooted in the organization with Corey Perry.
I can't see it.
When Bobby said he wants the, he had a problem with some of the older players of the team at Bob's Breakfast, right? He just was like, hey, some of this leadership core doesn't like these younger guys coming in. My opinion, you look at that right wing is just log jammed with players who are better than Corey Perry, and maybe Perry's, making us think about having to play on the third and fourth line, right? Maybe he's,
I'm sure he is. He's a proud guy. He's a guy at one point won a Hart Trophy, and you've got Troy Terry, Andre Kasha, Daniel Sprong at times all starting over you on that right side, even Jakob Silfverberg. I'm sure he still thinks he's a better player than all of them. He wouldn't be where he is if he didn't.
He's a Team
And
Canada guy.
yeah,
He's a champion.
I'm sure it hurts him a bit. I'm sure it hurt him a bit that he was bumped down the depth chart. But I think deep down he understands why. I'm sure he can realize that his production wasn't up to par, and of course a lot of that may be due to his knee injury that he had surgery for during the season. But I think it's more of a mutual thing. I'm sure he was hurt a little bit by it. I don't think maybe he blames management a little bit, but I think it's more of a mutual thing where he thinks he can kind of move on and maybe get a fresh start later on in his career, and the Ducks are more than happy to get some of that contract off the books.
How does it feel for you? He's your favorite Ducks player, right?
Yeah, it's tough. Like I said, I would have. I think I think people are split. I think there's people who are happy to see him go because the production isn't there, and there's people who are really fans of Corey Perry, and I realized that this is the best move for the franchise. But it's tough to see this guy go. I would have loved to see him continue to score 20 or 30 goals until he retired, and then get his number raised to the rafters, which he probably still will. But
He still will, for
finish
sure.
his career as an Anaheim Duck. I think we all wanted to see Getzlaf and Perry win another one with the Ducks. It's unfortunate, at least for Perry, that won't happen again, and for Getzlaf, he's kind of running out of time. So it's definitely tough. I think nobody would have thought it would have got this bad for Corey Perry. I think when he had that first down season, we're like, oh, he's gonna come back. He had back-to-back 30-goal seasons. It's just a down year. He still put up 53 points, whatever. Another season, scores below 20 goals. Now we're starting to worry a bit, and then obviously this last season, and it's starting to look bad for him. It seems like he's really starting to go downhill. So it's tough to see a guy who has meant so much to this franchise go downhill like that.
Yeah, I mean, and it's basically been the twins, Perry and Getzlaf, right? Every time you talk about the Ducks, that's those are the star players in this team. Those are the guys that have led the way. But as Getzlaf said, I mean, all good things come to an end, right? Essentially, it's his comments were interesting too. He wrote, "It's a really tough day for all of us." He said in a text message, "I love that guy, and I've been through everything with him in one way or another." And then later on in the Stevens Cooper article, he came out and said, "I guess we all know there's an end, that there is an end one day, but until it happens." It's pretty much a foregone conclusion as well, though, that with everything that's come out, you don't leak this as an organization if you plan on keeping a guy, right? There's no way he suits up come September.
Yeah, it would have come out. Yeah, if he was gonna stay, or if there was any hint of him staying, this wouldn't have come out. Especially with the Ducks, you mentioned earlier in the show they're pretty tight-lipped about most things, and unless something leaks, it's usually going to happen. Especially when it comes to a player of Corey Perry's caliber and him leaving. The fact that this is out there and the way it leaked, and the fact that they reached out and said this, it's happening. It's happening. He's not going to suit up for the Ducks next year, unless somehow they work something out where both of them want to, the team and the player want to stay. But I just can't see it happening.
So, what is a Corey Perry worth? NHL Scout says he believes Perry is worth for sure in the trade market or free agency. He would enter if a buyout occurs. He said that basically he would keep him or try to move him. The Scout said not to buy him out, and then NHL executives said that he would probably get 2 years, around $4 million per season if he gets bought out. So a bought out Corey Perry would be a very wealthy Corey Perry. But how do you feel about those two statements, really?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about the contract first, because I thought if he got bought out, that's what teams would be looking for in him, at about $4 million, because the production isn't really there, but you have that potential that maybe he bounces back. You never know. I mean, teams will look at that knee surgery two different ways, and whether it's really the end of his career or maybe he'll come back and be a completely different player. It all depends on, and I think the teams that will go hard after him will think that he could come back and be the player, or somewhat close to the player he used to be. And $4 million for 2 years is a worthy gamble on that for a guy who could slide into your top six, play in the power play, and be a really valuable asset for you.
He does have name recognition too, right?
Exactly.
I mean, he does.
Hart Trophy on his resume, Maurice Richard winner. So he will, in free agency, he'll garner, I think, more interest than a lot of people think he will. I think there'll be at least 5 to 10 teams that'll be interested in him, and if not more. A lot of contenders that have the cap space to work that out for $4 million will definitely be in on that. And honestly, that's why I can't see too many teams coming in for a trade. Like, what's the point? If you know he's going to hit free agency, you don't have to give up any assets if the Ducks are going to buy him out. Unless it's a team who's looking to send a bad contract the other way and
Yep.
maybe get Corey Perry retained at $4 million and hope that he can help your team and get rid of a player who you know isn't going to help your team. That's the only way I see him getting done. If you're the Ducks, though, and you have to sweeten the pot, there's no point. There's no point in making that trade or bringing on another bad contract when you can just buy him out. It would have to make sense for the Ducks. There's some players we'll mention later on. I think Nikita Zaitsev is one of them that maybe if you think he's a valuable player for your team, you could send Corey Perry to the Leafs, retain some salary, get Nikita Zaitsev back. But even that doesn't seem as enticing. You might as well just buy him out.
Yeah, I mean, but the buyout does some weird things for the cap hit. It puts you at 2.6, 6.6, 2 million and 2 million for what they would owe of 13.25 million, basically cap hit, is what that's showing there. Buyout cost $8 million, but just very interesting how the cap hit affects the team that way. But I think if you're going to trade for Corey Perry, there would definitely be salary retention. There's no way the Ducks are going to convince somebody to take on that full cap hit, full cost. There's just no way. Unless they throw in some ridiculous, they throw in their 9th overall pick, which would be a dumb move to do, right? So that's not happening. They're most likely going to cut his salary in half. And then, in my opinion, I mean, if the deal makes sense, I mean, I really could see them using that second first-round pick to do so, to get rid of Corey Perry at half the cost.
Yeah, I could see it, and I think that would come down to the fact that maybe they would rather give him, what, $4 million, 4.2 million or whatever half his contract is, 4.2, 4.3 million over 2 years, rather than have his cap hit affect you for 4 years. And yes, for 3 years it's going to be around 2 million. The first year is 2.6. The last two are both just 2 million. And it's really 2020 and 2021, that season, that where the cap hit hurts you because you'll be paying out $6.625 million. But even for that season, it's not like the Ducks are really going to be hurt by that. They don't have anybody big that they have to sign at the end of that season. I think it's Brendan Gooley is one of them, Troy Terry, Daniel Sprong, but you're not going to be shouting out big contracts to those guys. Patrick Eves' money comes off the books at that point. Kessler, we would assume, would still be on the LTIR at that point as well. It's not like that buyout cost in that second year where it's so much higher than the other years is going to come back to hurt you. So it all depends on what you want to do if you're the Ducks, right? Do you want to have to pay a guy who's not playing for your team, or do you want to just retain salary and cut it down to 2 years instead of 4 years?
So do you think they go? You think a buyout's happening then? They're kind of what you already said, right? And why trade for a guy you know is going to be bought out? It's in the media. He's going to get bought out.
Yeah, I just can't see a team unless, like I said, they're going to move a bad contract back, and that the Ducks think they can get value out of the player they're bringing in. You see those trades sometimes as well, where two teams will trade troubling players. Sometimes it's younger players. I think it's mostly younger players who just haven't worked out in that franchise, and you usually see a swap of those two guys. Rarely do you see guys at this stage of their career that are struggling with teams that are swapped, but that's the only trade I could see Corey Perry getting traded in. Like I mentioned, Nikita Zaitsev or players of that kind of caliber where that team is actively shopping them and trying to get that contract off the books. And if they think Corey Perry could come in and add value to their team, and if the Ducks think a player like Nikita Zaitsev or whoever else they bring in could bring value to their team, then that's a hockey trade that makes sense.
So basically, what I'm going to ask you next is, what about which team actually would you think would take a risk on Corey Perry? Like, who do you think is really going to want a guy that's coming off? He's 34 years old, coming off major knee surgery, off rehab. Only played a handful of games towards the end of last season. Didn't put up anything spectacular, but he showed signs that he could still play. Maybe obviously at the same pace, but he would definitely be relegated, like you said, to a power play, third line minute role. Who would take him?
Are we talking free agency or trade?
Let's go buyout scenario. He gets bought out. Who's going to take a risk at Corey Perry?
I think there's a lot of teams, and I think that wouldn't unfold. He wouldn't be a guy I don't think would go right away. I think he's one of those guys that goes after somebody like Artemi Panarin goes, or somebody, some of the more higher profile names. I think Matt Zuccarello is still an unrestricted free agent. I know Dallas is working on a contract for him. But once those guys go, the younger guys who have a little bit more consistency in them at that point in their career, once they're off the table, I think the interest in Corey Perry starts to pick up, and I think there'd be a lot of teams interested in him. I think Pittsburgh could be a team that's interested. I know they're looking apparently at defensemen like Jacob Trouba and others, but I think he could be a good fit there if they're looking for some offense. They seem to take a chance on older guys and trying to revitalize some of their career and go for another Stanley Cup, so he could work there. Arizona, their offense struggled heavily last year, and if they think bringing in Corey Perry at a much lower salary than he's making now, and he would definitely at that point, I think he'd probably come in as one of their better right wings, right? Like Clayton Keller's a left wing and a center. They've got Alex Galchenyuk and Stepan in the middle. The right side is where they're a little bit vulnerable and they're a little bit weak, so he could come in there and really give something to their offense. So that's a chance for them there. And then Edmonton was a team that was linked to him. I think Darren Dreger on TSN, I think 560.
Took the words out of my mouth. I was going to bring that up. I had no idea that Dreger even said that. I was going to say the Ducks were going to take Milan Lucic in a trade for Corey Perry.
I hope that's not. Yeah, I don't think. God forbid that happens. But
I would have to quit watching games for a little bit. I would be very upset about that.
Yeah, I mean, he would work in Edmonton in the sense that they've been looking for depth on the wings, and if they think they could get something out of him, and whether they want to play him with, imagine him playing with Draisaitl and McDavid. That's giving him the best opportunity he could probably get in the league to get anywhere close.
He's definitely got better hands than Milan Lucic for sure.
Yeah, he's got better hands than anybody that's played with Connor McDavid in the last 3 years, likely other than Leon Draisaitl. So, I could say Pittsburgh, I could see Arizona, I could see Edmonton as some teams that'd be looking to go after him. Once you get farther down, I think it'd be any team really who missed out on Artemi Panarin or on Matt Zuccarello or whoever else is available and thinks they still have a shot and they need a player like Corey Perry and just hope that he can get 20 goals. I think if any team can pay him $4 million and he gets 20 goals, 50 points, it's a pretty good season. I think if the Ducks went out and signed a guy at 2 years for $4 million and he put up back-to-back 50 point seasons, 20
that's
goals,
a win.
That's
a
win.
Pure win.
And I think Corey Perry still potentially has it in him. Now, we haven't seen a full season from Corey Perry since having the knee surgery, so that's where I think a lot of teams might pull away from that. But there's definitely going to be interest in him still.
Maybe he plays more of that rough and tumble style, right? And he's going to go to a team that's going to want him to be nasty. Edmonton definitely likes that, and that was part of the reason why I was thinking that too. But I would probably think if you're Edmonton, you want to go youth. You want to get the bad contracts off the books. Taking a run at a guy who's 34 recovering from major knee surgery is probably not the best idea, but it's very old school hockey guy that's still going around in the league to have that report come out of Canada.
Look who's in charge of the Oilers now, right? Look who's in charge. You got Ken Holland, who's an old school hockey guy, and you've got Dave Tippett, who's arguably an old school hockey guy.
Yeah, that's just the way it goes.
Honestly, you look at the two guys now in charge of the Oilers, and Corey Perry starts to make a little bit more sense to put. And then you look at the depth there, and the fact that Puljujarvi apparently wants out and wants a fresh start, and he's a right wing for them. And then their depth on right wing after that, there's almost nothing there. Starts to make a little bit more sense, especially if they can move Milan Lucic off the books, buy him out, whatever, get rid of him, then Corey Perry starts to make a little bit more sense in Edmonton.
Would you see any hope? And I know that we've talked about this prior. I was really big earlier this season on Nikolaj Ehlers. I still am. Any hope that there's some sort of way he comes to Anaheim? I know we're hopping off back and forth between these guys, but I really like the idea of Nick Ehlers coming in and playing wing at 22 years old for the Ducks.
Yeah, I think we mentioned this on our last show, right? Briefly, but man, he's only 23, and a guy who before last year had back-to-back 60-point seasons. A guy who's going to likely consistently score 20 for the rest of his career and get probably touch 30 a couple times. He would be a perfect fit for the Ducks at this point. I mean, imagine him playing with Ryan Getzlaf and Ricard Raquel, for just next season and beyond. And it's a move I think I could see it happen. Not maybe the Ducks, but I could see the Jets possibly trying to move on for Nick Ehlers. Not because of what he did. I don't think he's really done anything wrong. Yeah, he struggled last year, but the fact that they have to re-sign Patrick Laine, they still have to deal with Jacob Trouba.
I mean, or get rid of him, depending on the report you read.
Nah, there's no way. There's no way. But I can't believe people are thinking that they'll get rid of Patrick Laine at this point in his career. But they have to deal with that. They've got to deal with Kyle Connor, who scored I think back-to-back 30-goal seasons, and he's arguably more valuable than Nick Ehlers at this point. And then you've got to deal with Jacob Trouba and Tyler Myers as well. So there's a lot of moving parts there. Nick Ehlers could be the odd man out. He's making $6 million, I think, for the next 5 or 6 years. So he's locked into a pretty decent contract for a guy who could score 60 or 70 points for your team, depending on how you utilize him. I would love him in Anaheim, but I don't know.
I don't think he's coming.
I mean,
he's not coming.
You could maybe see a move that is Fowler maybe plus, or if you want to do a hockey deal, Fowler for Ehlers. I think the Ducks definitely win that. But you look at the season.
They're not doing that. There's no way they're doing that.
Well, teams that are going to go after Nick Ehlers because they want to obviously get a better deal are going to look at the season he just had, and they're going to use that to try and lower his value. Obviously the Jets are going to then go and look at the last few seasons, but 2 seasons ago, 25 goals, 64 points, played an entire 82-game season. The season after that, 60 points, 29 goals, again, played an entire 82-game season. Last year dealt with a little bit of injury problems, still got 21 goals, but only had 37 points. They'll look at that, and they'll use that as an example on maybe trying to get a lower price on him. But he's still going to command a lot. And if for the Ducks, if it's a defenseman, somebody came to me with a possible option of Richie Mahura and I think a second-round pick, or even Richie Mahura and the 29th pick in this year's draft. I could see it, but only if the Jets were in a position they had to trade him. They're not getting rid of him unless they have no other option but to get rid of him.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about the Ducks, though, if they want to go out and get a guy and take on cap, I mean, cap friendly is showing the Ducks have over $9 million projected cap space, and that's with Corey Perry on the books.
Yeah.
Right? That's still with him on the books. That's still with Kessler on the books. Let me see if Ease is on there. That's still with Ease on the books. Yeah.
If you buy him out, you get $6 extra million, I think, for this season, because he'll only have $2 million for this upcoming season. If you retain 50% of his salary, which is the max you can retain in a trade, you'll open up a little bit over $4 million. So then you'll have around $13 million in cap space. So they have room to work with, whether it's making a deal to bring in a player like Nick Ehlers and even if you don't have to send salary out, or bringing in maybe a bad contract to make that less of a return that you're sending out. So if Nick Ehlers and if Winnipeg wants to get rid of another bad contract to make more room for Patrick Laine, or maybe to keep Tyler Myers and Jacob Trouba and to sign Kyle Connor, you can now present that option to them because you have that extra cap space. None of that I don't think gets done until Corey Perry is either traded or bought out. But the Ducks are definitely in a position to maybe go and make that move than they were, say, at the beginning of last year.
Let's move on here for a sec about another candidate. We got to talk about Nikita Zaitsev. Why do you think that he would be a fit in Anaheim, or do you? I know that there's been talk about him, the Ducks being the leading guys, to want to get him. I find that very strange, honestly.
Yeah, I find it strange that if the Ducks were interested in him, I don't think he's a player that Bob Murray would normally look at. We know his track history with Russians, and that's almost become a joke about him. But he doesn't seem like the player that Bob Murray would go after. But when we were talking about right-handed defensemen and looking at free agency, guys like Tyler Myers and Anton Strawman, and who the Ducks could bring in as a right-shot defenseman, I had said that the Nikita Zaitsev would probably be the most likely option that they would go for, and going to get him in a trade, because Anton Strawman's a little bit old for what they're looking for, and you're going to overpay for him in free agency, and you're definitely going to overpay for Tyler Myers, and whatever deal you would have to make for Jacob Trouba, and then also re-signing him, probably wouldn't be worth it for where the Ducks are at this point. So then you look at who's the next best guy there, it's probably Nikita Zaitsev. And if the Ducks really want to shore up that right side, he's not the worst option. Had a great first season with the Leafs, has struggled since, but his usage, he's been put in a different position off that first season because the Leafs have brought in different defensemen, and guys like Morgan Riley have moved up in the depth chart, same with Jake Gardiner. where Zaitsev has kind of been putting in a difficult position. So he's a good bounce back candidate. He's only 27, but it's tough to see them going to make that move. But James Myrtle just wrote an article where he had
I was
the
just going to
Ducks.
say that, yeah.
Yeah, he had the Ducks as a leading candidate, and whether that's
One of the
because,
three, right? There were three on his list.
Yeah, whether that's because he thinks the Ducks are interested. I think he more so put them there because they clearly need help on right D. It's really just Josh Manson at this point, and that's it. That's why I think the move would make sense, because I can't see them going after Strawman, Myers, or Trouba. But
Please
I
no
just
on
don't know what the
Strawman
return
and
is.
Myers.
Like,
No.
what is the return, or what do you have to give up for Zaitsev? Because he's asked for a trade, and the Leafs are willing to get rid of him, so you could probably get him for less. But it all depends on what you're going to have to give out. If you're trading a prospect, I probably wouldn't do it. If you're just going to give up a pick or something just to take on the salary because the Leafs want to get rid of him, if it's a low pick or whatever, or it's something else, or it's Patrick Eve's contract, so the Leafs can bury it on the LTIR, then take that trade, because Nikita Zaitsev, I think, still has the potential for a bounce back, and he's better than what you have right now. And if it doesn't work out, I think you're paying him for 2 more seasons at $4 million, and that's it. So it's a low risk type move, which is something we see Bob Murray make. He's got him for 2 years. It's not just a rental. You didn't give up it for nothing. He has the option where he's got this year and next year to kind of figure it out. And it's not a high cap hit that it's going to hurt them, especially with the cap space they have. So it's a move that I could see them making, only if they can get a good deal for it.
Well, they definitely need defensemen, that's for sure. So, I mean, just looking at the roster on Cap Friendly, they just they got Josh Manson, Lindholm, and Fowler. That's it. And Gooley, right, that are signed.
Yeah. I mean, listen, we got some people in the chat saying, no, Zaitsev. I agree with it. I don't think Zaitsev he's not a great player. You look at his puck possession in the last 2 years, it's not great. I think it's about 46% the last 2 seasons, playing in a Leaf system that has been kind of porous the last few years, and whether that's coaching or just the defensive system, that remains to be kind of determined still. But I still look back at that first season, and you see a little bit of potential there. He was above 50% in shot attempts, and he had, I think, 32 assists and 36 points that year. There is potential for him to be a decent player if he's utilized correctly. Whether Dallas Eakins can do that or not, I don't know. Whether Zaitsev just kind of fizzled out after one good season, who knows? But I think you could take a shot at it, because normally I would say no, but when you look at who's the option right there, and especially if you want the Ducks to be competitive or you think they have a shot to be good next year, he's better than what you're going to bring in. He's an NHL defenseman. I think he's a 4 or 5 on most teams, maybe a 6, depending on what team he goes to. But he's
So you
better
play
than what they
Lindy
have
and
right
Manson
now.
together, Fowler and Gooley, and then Zaitsev and someone
Larson
else.
or whoever.
Yeah, who else you bring
better,
up?
He's better than who you would bring up other than. I mean, they signed that guy out of Finland. I think it was Jani Hakapanga. I just butchered his name, but they signed him. But he's more of a 6 or a 7, right? Depending on how he adjusts to the game and how well he comes over, they really don't know. It's not the worst option in the world to bring in Zaitsev for 2 years at $4 million. That's all I'm saying. There's worse deals you could make, like signing Anton Strawman, or giving up too much for Jacob Trouba, or going out and signing Tyler Myers for a ridiculous amount of money.
No, please,
You
not
might as
him.
well.
No.
You might as well, like, Zaitsev. Out of all of those options, is the low risk, high reward option. If it doesn't work out, you gave up almost nothing probably to get him, because the Leafs are looking to get rid of him. If it works out, great. And you're paying him to be a 4 or 5, or you're only paying him $4 million for 2 years. And then you have the option to either keep him on if he did well, or just move on altogether after the 2 years are up.
All right, so where do you want to go next? Do you have anybody with any questions, or you have something else you want to touch on here before we wrap?
DB Lowry in our chats, when we were talking about Perry going to the Oilers, he said Perry for Lucic and Puljujarvi. Would you do that? Because that's interesting.
Oh,
How many years does Lucic have left?
I'm checking right now. Dude, I just don't.
Yeah, I don't want Lucic, but that's the question. We know we don't want Lucic, but Puljujarvi, like
So you would be if Perry doesn't play next season, right? Which we all know he's not going to. Milan Lucic, by the way, would have to waive his no move, and he's got 4 years left at 6. So that's a lot of scratch for a guy who's basically not scoring anymore.
You would think, if the Ducks are retaining on that, I would assume the Oilers would have to retain some of it. right? Like, there's no way the Ducks are taking all 6 of that on for 4 years.
Would you even take Lucic at $3 million? Like, I don't know, man. That's a lot of
If I
cash
could
for a
get
guy that puts up
Puljujärvi,
20
maybe.
points.
If you get Puljujärvi, maybe, right? But I can't see a deal where the Ducks are retaining salary on Perry and the Oilers are retaining salary on Lucic. It's a wash there. Then there'd be almost no point in retaining the salary. You might as well just trade the guys straight up and then have a sweetener in there because Perry's better than Lucic. Is Perry that much better than Milan Lucic that the Oilers have to throw in Jesse Puljujärvi? I don't
That's a
know.
big cost. That's a big cost for the Oilers.
I
Really
don't think
getting rid of Jesse Puljujärvi.
yeah, I don't think we're debating if this trade would ever happen because I don't think it would. I don't think Bob Murray would bring in Milan Lucic at $6 million for the next 4 years. I just think we're debating if it's even plausible or if the value is even there. You know, Puljujärvi apparently wants out, wants a fresh start. I know the Oilers would want to keep a player like that around because I don't think they want to give up on him yet, even though they're not giving that guy enough opportunities. I'm surprised.
No,
They
I
haven't
mean,
played
9
him.
points in 46 games last year doesn't really say like they're giving him a lot of opportunity
No,
for
and
sure.
I think he was playing like 10, 11 minutes a night. This is a guy who should probably be playing up there with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl if you want to give him a chance to succeed. I don't know if they would do it. I would probably, you know, if we know Perry's not going to be there. If we're in this situation right now where it's trade him or buy him out, and you have to bring on Milan Lucic to get Puljujärvi, I would take that risk in the sense if Puljujärvi pans out, that accelerates your rebuild a lot, especially if he turns out to be the player you thought he could be, which is a player who could put up maybe 30 goals in a season. He scores 60 to 70 points when you look at when he was drafted. A guy that people thought could threaten for the second or first spot. You know, I think it was, I know this happens every year, but in his draft year, there was rumblings a couple days before the draft that teams were considering taking him over Austin Matthews or Patrick Laine, whether those are truthful or not,
Oh,
because
good
that
lord.
happens all the time. He was
Did those
still
come out of
doing
Canada?
stuff. Probably. He was still, you know, making a case that he was just as good as those two players. And I don't think he's been given the opportunity to succeed. So I think, you know, fresh start for him could be a big thing. I would do it. I just don't think it happens.
No, it's not going to happen. As much as Jesse Puljujärvi would be great in Anaheim, I don't want Milan Lucic. I don't think the Ducks want Milan Lucic either. So
Yeah, I can't see it. And then he also said the Ducks would be better off grabbing Jake Gardner instead, who I believe Jake Gardner is a UFA right now. So I think there's a chance he could go to any team. Ducks got rid of him once. I don't know if he'd come back, and especially I don't think it would be an option they would go for. And honestly, I think they would go for Zaitsev over Gardner at this point because Gardner is going to play on the left side. And when you look at the fact that there's Fowler, Lindholm, Larson, Mahura, and now you add Gardner into that mix and Brendan Gooley, I can't see it. It's Gardner is the same with any left shot defenseman. You look at Ole Mata going to Chicago. I'm sure the Ducks weren't even close to touching that as well. It wasn't a high price to go get him, but it's hard to convert guys over from the left to the right. I know Gardner's done it occasionally, but the Ducks don't want to be playing 5 or 6 left-handed guys in the lineup. For how many years did we see them most of the time having 3 lefties and 3 righties? I think most coaches and especially most general managers would like to go that way. So I just can't see it. I think Zaitsev would be a guy they'd be going for at that point. And even you've mentioned on a couple podcasts that Bobby said at his breakfast that he's looking for a big right-handed defenseman who can shoot the puck. I'm not saying
and eat minutes, big minute eater.
minutes.
Yep.
I'm not saying Nikita Zaitsev fits that mold perfectly, but he is a big right shot defenseman who can put up points and has in the past. And he at one point I think in his first season was playing 22 minutes a night. So he fits that a little bit more than what you're going to get from Jake Gardner. And I don't think the Ducks need a Jake Gardner when they've kind of got that in Cam Fowler already. Maybe they have that in Josh Mahura. They don't need that. They more so need a guy like Nikita Zaitsev, as polarizing as he is, than they do a guy like Jake Gardner.
Yeah. And plus, I think Jake Gardner's going to come with a higher price tag at this point.
Yeah, no, for sure. He's in free agency. You know, it's going to be silly season, July 1st, where guys are going to get more money than they're worth. So I just, I can't see. It's going to be interesting, honestly. Free agency is going to be interesting this year because it all depends on where the Ducks think they're going to go. I think buying out Corey Perry maybe signals that they're going in a different direction, going to try and be younger, and that they're going to kind of embrace the rebuild. but it also opens up a lot of cap space. So if they think they want to be competitive, they have a lot of options to go out and either make a trade or sign somebody that we don't expect. So I think for agency, we're going to really start to see what the plan is for Dallas Eakins and Bob Murray's team next year.
Yeah, they might just also want to buy him out to save some money for the Sam Willies, who just spent like $110 million at their Great Park ice complex, which they're holding the press conference for
Yeah, I
Dallas
was going to
Eakins.
say they're using it to announce the press conference, so they're getting some use out of it.
Yeah, they spend a lot of money here in Anaheim. They do a lot of charitable things. Then they have they're basically a heavy hitter here with youth hockey. They do a lot. So and they spend a lot of money, and they've let Bob run this team nearly to the cap the past couple of seasons. Maybe they just want to be like, okay, let's just go have a youth movement, recoup some cash, maybe not be a cap team. Who knows? Like you said, that we'll find out more once the season gets underway here in July. Oh, the silly season, as you put it. I like that.
Yeah, last thing I want to touch on because I thought this was pretty interesting. I briefly mentioned it during the show as the Vegas odds for the Ducks. They came out for every team. They came out, but the Ducks are 66-1 to win the cup. That's tied for the second worst with the Red Wings, the Kings, the Devils, and the Rangers. Keep in mind the Devils they have the first overall pick this year. The Rangers have the second overall pick. LA has the fourth overall pick, and Detroit's up in that mix too. These are some of the worst teams in the league this year. Yes, the Ducks were in that mix, but you see them being that bad? Like, should we go out and make $100 bet on this right now? Because, if they win the cup and you put $100 down, $100 at 66-1, that's you win $6,600 right there.
Yeah, but they're not winning the cup. Come on now, they're not doing it.
I mean, you saw that guy, Blues fan, who bet $400, I think, on the Blues to win the cup in like January when they're dead last.
Cashed
in the
out
league.
$100,000, didn't he?
Yeah, he won $100,000. So.
And people kept trying to buy his ticket too. They kept trying to buy his ticket that he used, like for $80,000 and then like $30,000. I heard it on Spit and Chickles. They were talking about that. Yeah, and he held on to it and won $100,000. I can't do it, man. They're not going to win a cup.
Well,
it'd be amazing if they did.
Before I give the answer, I want your answer on if you think they are that much of a long shot to win the cup. I'm going to give you some of the teams who have better odds than them to win the cup next year. The Oilers are 40-1, Vancouver's 40-1, Buffalo's 50-1.
No, they're not that bad. They're not that bad. No.
Who else is there? Columbus is 28-1. I think that's right now. That's going to go down if they lose Duchesne, Panarin, and Bobrovsky, but they're 28-1 right now. And the Philadelphia Flyers are 25-1.
Philly's got a good young group. They do. I think Philly's got a good young group.
I don't think they deserve to be that low, right?
I don't think so either. I don't think the Ducks deserve to be that low purely because John Gibson. I mean, all the teams you just named don't have that goalie.
Ryan Getzlaf and Ricard Raquel and a lot of the younger players. Like, I don't think they're worse than Buffalo.
It's the unknown quantities, right? It's the unknown that's going to affect whatever betting odds that come out, and it's certainly going to change. I would feel like, right? I mean, they're going to realize that this team it's going to fluctuate as we go.
Right. Yeah.
But the initial betting odds,
a lot different.
Yeah. Like, it's going to look different.
Once the Blue Jackets likely lose Bobrovsky, Panarin, they're going to go way down, and teams are going to move all over the place.
Yeah, let's revisit this comes Thanksgiving. That's a good time to come back and revisit the odds because that's when we'll kind of know where the team's at.
Well, if you want to make a bet right now and you want to bet on the Ducks winning the cup, probably now is the best time to do it because these are probably the worst odds that they're going to have all season. Because I don't see them being.
Don't burn $100. They're not winning a cup, man.
I mean, hey, if you lose, it's $100, and you bet it back in June, and come April next year, you won't even remember it. So, but if you win $6,600, you'll remember me telling you to bet $100.
Very true. So everyone take Eddie's advice and go put $100 down on the Ducks for sure. We got anything else? Anything in chat, or are we all in the clear, my friend?
Well, yeah. Hopefully tomorrow we don't get. Apparently Dallas Eakins is going to get announced as head coach tomorrow, right at Great Park. So we've covered that now, but hopefully we don't get some kind of Corey Perry move.
Corey Perry buyout news tomorrow. We'll be back on.
Then we'll be back on in a couple days. If not, then you'll see us after the draft. We were considering doing a live show during the draft, but. Scheduling is going to be kind of difficult to make that work at 8 p.m. my time, 5 p.m. your guys' time on
that's rough.
Friday. I think it's on Friday.
Yep.
On the 20th. So we'll be doing a show probably either the day after the second day, so the 22nd, 23rd, 24th. Sometime in between then, we'll be doing a recap show and looking at who the Ducks drafted. But yeah, I know. Everybody in the chat's like, no live show, but it's tough. we might have live reaction, like a quick live reaction video on Instagram or Twitter and something after they, depending on who they pick first, just to give you guys a kind of a taste or whatever of how we feel about that pick. But then we'll get really in depth on it on our recap show a couple days after the draft.
Yeah, let's shoot for Sunday, June 23rd. Let's shoot for that one. We'll shoot for that. We'll confirm it this week as like setting in stone a time and all that. But we'll keep it on the same draft weekend. I don't want it to go too far after. We got to shoot that weekend.
Yeah, and hopefully, I mean, last year we got really lucky that we were able to get so much of the prospects on. We got Isaac Lindstrom, Jack Perbix, Blake McLaughlin last year, Benoit Olivier Grew. We'll try. Depending on who they draft this year, we'll try and get some. Hopefully, we get as lucky as we did last year, and it can get you some of those interviews throughout the summer too.
Yep. So stay tuned with us. We'll have plenty more for you guys. Lots more content to come this summer. Thank you guys as always for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys soon.